Chairman Rose, chairman of the Galar Pokemon League and president of Macrocosmos, and regarded as one of the worst villains of Pokemon history, not because of what he did, but how he is written. While many have spoken about how badly written he is as a villain, I want to give you not only his history and what he did, but also his goals, and how he never could have truly been a hero no matter how hard he tried, because he was destined to fail. Howdy there, I'm Krillic. I'm here to explain all of this about Chairman Rose and more. Gonna go through his history, what he became, the research that he found out, and then at the end of all of this, I'm actually gonna go over Galar, the Pokédex, and what alternative solutions there could have been to reviving a eldritch creature from beyond the stars. Just some quick housekeeping before I continue. Thank you so much for all the views on the explaining every single regional variant. That video has done amazing. Best video on the channel by far. Who would have guessed? And thank you for supporting me further. I'm gonna do my best. There's plenty of comments in there, some really good ideas. All of these questions are brought forth by either, if I don't think of them myself, then they're brought forth by you. So if you have any burning questions that you might have that you want answered about Pokemon, then please comment them below. I am making a list and doing whichever ones pique my interest the most. Currently, there is a vote going on, or at least the vote is over by now, between explaining the entire Pokemon food chain or explaining every single Ultra Beast. I'm not saying I won't do the Ultra Beast one. It's just that the food chain one's going to come first, and that's going to be a really big video also. So bear with me, as that one's going to take a ton of research, and I might go just as crazy as I did with the previous one. Finally, last bit of housekeeping is that I see my, like, I did have a good constructive criticism comment of, hey, I could see that you're looking off to the side a lot. If you have your script, put it under the camera. My script is right over here. If I look over anywhere else, that is the dog brain in me wanting me to just look at anything else than just this camera over and over again. So if you see me look here, I'm reading from the script. If you see me look anywhere else, I'm just distracted, but am trying to do my best. So good constructive criticism though. Don't, like, 100%. I'm loving the comments. So let's get into this. So in Chairman Rose's history, according to Oleana, his secretary, Rose worked in the coal mines before becoming runner-up champion to the Pokemon League, becoming its chairman, and founding Macrocosmos. He did become runner-up to Leon, the actual champion of Galar. He was actually said to have set Leon on the road to becoming the champion, and was determined to resolve Galar's energy crisis, though the peak of it was estimated to not happen for upwards of 1,000 years in the future. One thing that we are going to have to understand very early on is that Chairman Rose is known to be an actions over words kind of person. He goes by the edge of his seat. He is bold. He had good intentions. He just didn't think through the consequences or ramifications of what could happen. As such, the entirety of the story that happens in Galar is what happens, and I kind of don't blame him. Galar's kind of a hole, to be honest. I mean, a lot of the Pokemon there are surviving in harsh conditions or environments, or just harshness in general. Galar is written to be a place that has environmental issues. But overall, the biggest key here to this entire story is that Chairman Rose started to figure out information regarding Galar particles. Galar particles are a phenomena localized to Galar. They are theoretically created infinitely by Eternatus, who landed on the planet during the darkest day as Eternamax. Essentially, when Eternamax came down, it spread out these particles and blotted out the sun, the sky, everything, which also in turn caused Pokemon to Dynamax or Gigantamax in their respective forms, and caused them to go on a rampage uncontrolled. When it was defeated by Zacian and Zamazenta, parts of it then broke off and landed throughout Galar, spreading and releasing tons of these particles, as these specific, like, wells are known as power spots. These particles left behind are still the Galar particles and cause the Dynamax and Gigantamax phenomena in Pokemon. Finally, after it did break off all of its pieces, after being damaged, it became Eternatus, no longer being able to become Eternamax and slumbers under Galar. This all happened about 20,000 years ago. But then Chairman Rose found all this out through his research and started looking into how these Galar particles could be used. So the tower atop Hammerlock Stadium absorbs remnant Galar particles that are in Galar, which then gets transferred over to the energy plant, which converts the Galar particles into electricity, and then the electricity is distributed across the Galar region. Honestly, this feels very reminiscent of oil in real life, where you have a finite source of energy that is being used. As such, that's why you get an increase of prices or decrease of prices, and why so much relies on oil. Look at your gas, look at your products, so on and so forth. Galar is, even though it's Europe, everybody faces the energy crisis of oil, or that oil can cause by not being around and by being depleted. As a side note, this is something that I studied in college, like, extensively, so I'm really happy to be talking about this. I get to nerd out, but I'm trying not to nerd out too much, because I do want to keep the focus on Pokemon as much as possible, but having my real life knowledge to assist in explaining this is super fun. Once again, it cannot be stressed enough that it is said that in 1,000 years, all these Galar particles are going to deplete. So, Rose talked with Leon and was trying to punch forward on a solution. Leon, of course, is like, hey, that's not for another 1,000 years. Why are you doing this right now? We have tons of time. I like Rose being proactive and altruistic, thinking about the future and so on and so forth this early on, doing all this research, doing all this effort. But it's his actions that ultimately cause his specific downfall at this point. As his plan was to take the particles and then infuse Eternatus with them in order to revive it, which will then cause it to turn into Eternamax. And as we had stated, Eternamax can theoretically infinitely produce these Galar particles. They would then capture it, control Eternamax, and they'd have infinite energy. Honestly, pretty goated idea. I'm not even gonna lie. I can't deny it. Genuinely goated idea. The problem here is you have a 20,000 plus year old eldritch being from the stars. We don't know where it came from or what else it could do, because we don't have anything else other than the legends of it. Being said that it could be controlled. Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a fantastic idea. And I know we as a player character do that, but story-wise, that doesn't happen. Story-wise, that doesn't, like, outside of, like, the games, you can't tell me that's something that would happen. And even if it did, you're gonna trust basically, effectively a child with this eldritch being? No! No! The feds would be all over that. Anywho, I'm gonna stop. We're gonna focus back on the story here. So I'm back. Realized I missed something in my research. If you don't want spoilers for the Pokemon anime of Journeys with Go, you might not want to listen to this part. Go just catches Eternatus and gives it to Leon, I guess, and then releases it after training it, and it stops wanting to destroy a Galar, but it doesn't stick around to release particles, I guess. So, I mean, at least there's that, but that doesn't solve any issues. You're back at square one, unless it's going to come back to give Galar particles. Yeah, that's something else. How does that work? What do you even do then? Like, seriously, you had it all in your hands. The plan is complete. You have the particles. You have the particle maker. You have this, that, and the other thing. I guess it can't be Eternamax, because maybe Eternamax is out of control. I don't know. But all I know is that's what happens. So I don't know. Maybe you have an answer. I couldn't find anything, or maybe I misunderstood something or missed something in general. But while getting footage and doing additional research and stuff, that's what I found out. So I didn't want to not include that. That'd be pretty dishonest of me. So unfortunately, this plan doesn't work, as we know. They turn into Eternamax, and alongside the player, Zacian and Zamazenta come back and have to put a stop to Eternamax Otherwise, all the Pokemon are Dynamaxing and Gigantamaxing all over Galar, and we're not gonna, the whole island's gonna sink. It's gonna be gone. You just want to see Pompeii 2? This is how you get Pompeii 2. Even though it's not Pompeii. Makes like Pompeii and Atlantis, I guess. Ultimately, as it was stated, Rose was rash in his decision-making and tunnel-visioned into resolving his goal before the peak of it was reached, thinking of his future generations, which, again, very altruistic. Problem is, he didn't think things through. He was so tunnel-visioned that he couldn't get the job done right and didn't think of the consequences. Now, the next part I want to talk about is what could have been alternatively done in order to resolve the energy crisis in Galar. Now, I am going to restrict all of this into what can be realistically feasible. I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, you have to catch Arceus. No, that's not realistically feasible within the world. I don't care what the games do. That is not realistically feasible. What is also humane? You can't have 10,000 Pikachus running around, chained up, freaking Power World style to generate your electricity. That is not humane. That is not going to be, that's not going to be allowed in this theory, this idealization of what could have been done. In addition, I want to restrict it to what Pokemon are native to Galar. The reason being is that you don't want to import an animal. They're not machines. As such, they're not going to, you can have one or two things happen. Either A, they don't adapt and they pass, or they're uncomfortable. They're not able to do what they normally would do. They feel threatened and so on and so forth. They could be an invasive at that point and cause incredible issues within the ecosystem. Or alternatively, we could end up with an all-new form of a Pokemon that is now then, I don't want to say useless to us, but not effective towards the product that we desire. So those are the restrictions that I'm going with. And I've gone through the entire Pokédex as best as I can in order to try and see what solutions there are and what potential discussions there are from it, with one solution at the end of this that I found. First and foremost, you can't rely long-term on any Pokemon that Gigantamaxes or Dynamaxes. Reason being is that they take Galar Particles in the first place. If you're looking for a solution long-term to completely replace Galar Particles, this is not the solution for you. You could use them here or there to help wean the region off of Galar Particles and that form of energy. That's what happens with solar and wind and geothermal and all the other different forms of energy, solar voltaic and everything. So it's a possibility to kind of pull things away and make the Galar Particles last longer if you're using them as a subsidiary or a smaller percentage of what the total is. Ultimately, this means that Pokemon like Gigantamax Pikachu, despite being able to produce energy as its power is equal to that of a power plant, however, it is difficult to use in people's homes since Pikachu can only remain in its Gigantamax form for a short time. So even if you could manage to use the Galar Particles consistently enough to have a long-form Gigantamax Pikachu, even in the direct game, it says that it's not sustainable, which I really liked that when I found that out. What I very quickly found out about this region is, again, just how much Rose was destined to fail. So that takes Gigantamax and Dynamax off the table. What about fire types though? Fire Pokemon in general would be a great solution, as fire could create steam with the right water Pokemon working together as well. You can create a miniature climate fit for fire types below a contained lake, which could serve the needs of both the Pokemon and humans. Imagine it this way. You have contained area where you have underground fire type Pokemon. Let's say they eat coal. Let's say they eat other forms of underground vegetation. They have a nice, warm, consistent environment that they are going to enjoy. Above that, you have a lake that is contained, because what this does is you have all the fire types below heating up the ground naturally, which then causes the water to boil and steam to come off of it. That steam is then captured and then used for power. That is one option that's available. It's not an incredibly effective option, but it is an option. It is a sustainable option that can actually serve to, let's say there's a fire type Pokemon that needs to get rehabilitated. It got injured in the wild and they need to bring it back. Why don't we have that? I know we have Pokemon Rangers, but like, I don't think I've ever seen, other than maybe the daycare, Pokemon that need to be rehabilitated by trainers or people and then released back in the wild. Why don't we have that? That needs to happen somewhere. I'm putting that in Pokemon Odyssey. If you don't know what Pokemon Odyssey is, it's a region that I'm making. Come join the streams. Happens like every Friday. But the problem with all this is that most of the fire types in this region are not reclusive, underground, or they are incredibly aggressive. Like Senate Scourge, which will just mess you up. They'll just attack you. They're not friendly. In addition, Colossal will also attack anyone who vandalizes their coal mine home, so they're off the table as well. I know that vandalization versus just taking coal is different, but effectively in my eyes, if I was a Colossal and I saw a Pokemon walk on in and take some of my coal that I love in my home, in my mind, bro, you did not just take my apple, you did not just take my mac and cheese, I will mess you up! Anywho, this brings me back to actually Torkoal, which I mentioned earlier in this video. It would have worked if it didn't need coal for energy. Torkoal eats coal, which fuels its body, and then it all comes out. That's how Torkoal functions. So that likely makes Colossal hate it, meaning that you would incite a fire-type Pokemon war between Torkoals and Colossal, and I hate to break it to you, but I'm pretty sure that Colossal's gonna win that one. We have another fire-type Pokemon, but that's Turtonator, and that's a walking OSHA violation, considering the explosions that it causes, and it leaves the poop around. Or shoots poop. That's a double OSHA violation. You cannot have Turtonator in a hospital. Even if the poop didn't explode, you can't have Turtonator in a hospital. Heatmore would arguably be the closest possible one, as they consistently produce flame and hunt after the mountain-dwelling Durant. Now, Heatmore doesn't seem to be an aggressive mon whatsoever, seems to be fairly docile. This could work as Durant lives on vegetation, making it so that way they can be tamed and farmed for domestication purposes. And in turn, you could domesticate Heatmore in that same fashion, making a giant Durant farm, which sounds genuinely scary because they are a steel type, and I know Heatmore can handle that. And I know there's plenty of other fire types, but that sounds scary. That sounds very scary. They also prefer being in the mountain, underground, so on and so forth, and they make maze-like tunnels. So, nevertheless, though, with the idea of the man-made lake, the fire types below, and then which would be Heatmore in this case, and then setting up a Durant farm to feed them, it could be feasible then in terms of steam energy, as Galar is also surrounded by water, so there'd be a very easy and quick source of water for you to get from, or to get stuff from. I'm not going to edit that, you've got this. Especially since our Pokemon like Galar and Weezing, which can assist with any purification efforts if for some reason the steam is ever tainted, which, considering Galar, it's possible, if it's not being contained properly. Actually, I just thought of something that's not on my script, which isn't really much of a script. It's more bullet points. I look at it a lot for someone that's just looking at bullet points, but just thought of something. When you have this process, and let's say that water isn't clean, you could do it with unclean water. You could actually sit there and, oh wait, no, is a Alolan Muck native? Okay. So Alolan Muck is actually not part of the Pokédex at all for this, and I know it's a different region. I was just very curious, because if you are going through this process, actually Muck in general isn't here, which is really weird considering it's a pollution monster. But nevertheless, how is Muck not native to Galar? I have to be looking at the wrong decks. Wow! Somehow Grimer and Alolan Muck aren't part of the Galarian Pokédex, and actually they're not natives there, which is really weird, because I would expect that considering how polluted the place is said to be and how bad I mean, it's more of an air thing, I guess, so there's that. So, I mean, cool. It's a story more about air pollution in the end, and energy crisis, so, okay, sure, why not? But my theory was that you could have imported, like, Alolan Grimer, Alolan Muck, which could then eat any sludge that's left behind by any burn-off from, like, unclean water, for example. So that way you could purify water and have steam energy all the same, And that sludge then gets put to use with Alolan, Grimer, and Muck, which are good Pokemon that like to be helpful and are friendly and will eat waste. So that would have been really cool. And now we get into one that is really interesting as well. The science is likely not here to properly do this, but I want to talk about Golurk. Because Golurk is said to have been invented by ancient people to serve as a laborer and protector of people in Pokemon. It also served as sentries on artillery platforms built into the walls of ancient castles, where it could fire energy beams. Golurk will faithfully follow its master's orders without question. They run on a mysterious energy. Now, considering how they move, considering their previous form and the rolling, considering how they bring themselves together, but like just looking at the pieces, it is theorized that Golurk is run on perpetual energy. If you don't know what perpetual energy is, perpetual motion energy, essentially it's the idea that, like, by just moving, I am creating energy, which will then allow me to move more, so that way I never have to stop moving. Because the act of movement in general, all this gesticulating that I'm doing takes energy, it takes calories. But the idea there is that my movement, or Golurk's movement, creates energy. So by expending energy, it's also creating energy, creating an equal point, potentially even actually going over, for Golurk's case, not just replacing the energy, but exceeding the energy, which would explain why if you remove the bandage on its chest, it goes on a rampage. It probably has a ton of energy from simply moving all the time. And because of all that, you get this potential solution through perpetual energy. The hardest part, though, is that if this is perpetual energy, how do you mimic it? You know, do you just put Golurks on a wheel? Is that humane? I mean, they follow without question, but they're still Pokemon. They're ghost types, so maybe they're spirits of something. It's so hard to tell. So that one's kind of off the table, but a really, really important one that research and time could be put into in order to find a solution for. Many electric types are also very hard to humanely use as a source of energy unless it is an emergency, so I won't cover Pokemon like Vikavolt or Boltund, but I will cover one electric type later on that is a resident of Galar. Lantern's also in the Galarian region. It's a very interesting Pokemon because the bacteria that is inside Lantern, inside of its light, work with Lantern's biology in order to create light, in order to create energy. I wanted to try and hook something in here about like photosynthesis, solar energy, solar voltaic energy, but considering Lantern is underwater and the light rays wouldn't fully reach at maximum capacity to any sort of solar panels or anything like that, it doesn't seem super viable unless there was something to replace it. In addition, Lantern aren't typically like pond creatures, they are open water creatures, to my knowledge, so, you know, that's not very humane to have a Lantern sequestered into a small containment zone. That sounds like an SCP thing. And so, I'm going to bring us in to my ultimate harebrained theory in order to save Galar. The only way that I could see Chairman Rose having ever succeeded in this process of saving Galar if he wanted to rely on one source of energy or even try to find 100 alternative sources in general. We're going to start with a very unlikely Pokemon, Ludicolo. Ludicolo can generate energy from music. More specifically, the Pokédex says, Ludicolo becomes more powerful when it hears festive music and will appear near laughing children on hikes. The reason is due to structures in Ludicolo's body that can produce energy when hit by sound waves with a cheerful rhythm. As it becomes more energetic and active, it will break into a dance. So you have Ludicolo, who you have music hitting it, it's happy, it's dancing, something's going on, it has some sort of biology, and even if it's not like energy that can be outwardly produced at all times, that is motion, that is effort, that is something that can be harnessed in some capacity while also making a Pokemon happy. So how do we make Ludicolo happy without having a constant band of people constantly playing at all times? I've got you. Toxtricity can create energy and music. By clawing at the organs on their chests, both forms of toxtricity can generate over 15,000 volts of electricity as well as sound. The sounds they make resemble those of electric string instruments, a standard guitar for amped form, and a bass guitar for low-key form. Toxtricity chugs stagnant water to absorb the dissolved toxins, which it then breaks down in order to generate electricity. So in this case, not only do we have a Pokemon that can create music, it can also generate electricity, and it is chugging stagnant water, bad water that isn't going anywhere, that has a buildup of phosphorus, of probably maybe iron, other toxins that are in there, that are unnatural, the abundance of the previous ones that I just stated, so on and so forth. All these things that are here. So it is a triple threat, and I know toxicity is used here or there in Galar to help with things, but this could be so much more. But we're not done yet. But I'm not done yet. There you go. Is that I know it went through your head. I know it went through your head. Rotom. Now, you're wondering why Rotom. Rotom possesses appliances, and it can speak human language through those appliances. I was going to say English, but, like, I don't think the Pokemon world speaks any language of our world. That might be something I have to look into. Because, I mean, yeah, I don't know. At the very least, Latin is actually unknown language. Unknown. U-N-O-W-N. Why am I explaining that? You're Pokemon nerds. You've made it this far. And if you made it this far, you should subscribe. I'm not done with the video yet, but, you know, if you listen to me this far, like, why aren't you subscribed yet? First off. Second off, go watch my other content. I do Nuzlocks and Supercuts, and I edit them down from, like, 40, 50 hours down to, like, maybe an hour. I do that all myself, and come say hi in the streams. I love talking to all of y'all. So, anywho, I'm gonna get back to the story, or get back to the research. Rotom can possess appliances, it can speak human through those appliances, and we can try and get it to act as a Pokemon ambassador to communicate with people. Oh, the Toxtricity want this. Well, we can provide that to them because we have somebody that can actually tell us what they want because it speaks Pokemon. Why have we done that yet? This ensures that Toxtricity and Ludicolo are cared for properly alongside any other Pokemon that might be part of the process, whether it's from carrying water over or I don't even know what else there could be, but it doesn't matter. It should be covered. So, what's my ultimate harebrained scheme? Basically, I would want an eternal rock show that Pierce could be the head of. The dude is sitting in bum nowhere in a destitute place that could use some love, and bring him in, bring some money throughout Galar. You already have this stadiums where, you know, you built on top of these vents that release Galar particles. Well, why don't you just have the events have a massive Ludicolo on Toxtricity? You already have the people singing. People love the music. Go ahead and throw in the Toxtricity to add to the song. Throw it, like, let them amp people up. Let them get excited. And then the Ludicolo are, like, the cheerleaders, basically. I don't know. Don't draw Ludicolo in a cheerleader outfit. Or maybe somebody do. Don't make me do it. I can draw, but I don't want to do that. Somebody else do that. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about that, but I'm leaving that in the video, too. But ultimately, this would be a group of Pokemon and people, really, happily creating energy for all of Galar together, and it's sustainable. Now, of course, as with real life, there is no singular solution, and there should be other forms of energy production that should be sought out, as the true solution in fantasy and real life here is to have varied forms of energy. I will nerd out for just about 30 seconds here, as places like the state of Nevada, where they were able to, through the use of solar, wind, solar voltaic, geothermal energy, and so on, were able to produce, and hydroelectric, sorry, were able to produce enough energy to fuel all of Nevada 104%, like 2 years ago. I think it lasted for 10 minutes, an hour. I'm not actually sure. I'd have to double check that, but nevertheless, this is off the noggin from what I remember. And that's it. That's the solution of life. Like, you can't just have one simple solution. It's usually a conglomerate of solutions brought together in order to properly serve the needs of not only humans, not only society, but also all other creatures that live within it in a sustainable way to ensure the health of ourselves and longevity of the planet as well. But ultimately, I don't know what other solutions there could be. I feel a little bad because Chairman Rose is hated on a lot, and I'm you know, I can be a little guilty of that as well. I like the guy. I think he's fun, but I always called him a bad villain. But I think he's not as bad as everyone made him out to be, and not just the because I don't know. I don't think many people consider him a good villain or a strong villain. And it's because he's not really meant to be a villain. I mean, in his final encounter with Leon, he gets angry and goes out, and tries to stop Leon from stopping him. He's tunnel vision. He's human. He's not like a crime boss like Giovanni, who's untouchable. He's not like, Cyrus, who is, again, another crime boss trying to create a whole new world. Chairman Rose's problem is very real, and I think that's something that should be recognized. I don't think Chairman Rose is as bad as it goes. I don't think he deserves as much hate as he gets, and I don't think this story deserves the amount of hate that it gets either. Don't get me wrong, I think the story could have been better. I think Sword and Shield might be my least favorite of them all, but I did enjoy it. I did make memories. I did enjoy my time playing it, and it served a very real issue that I was too unconcerned with at the time, that I didn't really care about. And now it's very interesting to me, not just as a person who has gone through classes and learned a lot of this stuff, but also just as a Pokemon researcher at this point. It's a very real issue. And I'm not going to get super emotional here or anything like that. It's just something that makes you think. It makes you wonder. A very real problem, a very real villain. He's not untouchable. Anybody could have been Chairman Rose. As such, I think that covers this topic through and through. I don't think there's anything else left for me to say. Please go check out my other videos, if you haven't somehow seen it, the explaining every single Pokemon regional form, go watch that. Regional variants, go watch that. Go watch it. It's a long video, but it's well worth the time. There's a couple things in it, plenty of good comments in there that help add to the experience. So add your comments and add your question. What burning questions do you have about Pokemon that you'd like to be answered? Watching all the videos on the channel helps support the channel, as I would love to do this for a living. I find a great passion in this, and it's just so much fun. I love taking fake things and applying real concepts to them and breaking them down and seeing what they're based on and so on and so forth. Thank you, MatPap. Your years of me watching you has kind of turn into me doing this a little bit. So I'm not going to go on any further. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't do anything I want to do. Don't think I want to do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye.